Darling, we've had one hell of a time, but the question on everybody's mind, where is the power?
Hello and welcome to Ideas Don't Bleed, a comics podcast presented by Ashcan Press and featuring Matthew Rosenberg and the Supple Boiz, Ethan S. Parker, and Griffin Sheridan. This is part 2 of our discussion with Kyle Higgins. We hope you enjoy.
We should take audience questions in a minute, but I actually had a question first, which is about the character Marshall in Radiant Black. What is his fucking day job? It seems like he's like a guy who pairs weed with movies. What is this job?
Okay, so he's very entrepreneurial, and he works at a retro video rental store that I wish existed in my hometown called The Real World. And he likes to use his position there as a platform to try out his business ideas on customers, which are actually a series of one-page comics that we do with Back Matter in issues where I bring in different, most of the time, brand new creators to do a one-page story that we then publish. And it just has to be Marshall pitching a crazy business idea. But when we first meet him in the store in issue 2, the marquee says, ask us about our what? Oh, it says, now featuring or guest starring CBD oil. It says, ask us about our What Lies Beneath plus Bath Bomb special. And so he's trying to sell these themed movie bath bomb pairings. It's become a recurring gag throughout issues. And so far that we actually then made them as a part of his idea when he becomes Radiant Black, spoiler, was he needs to help his PR. He needs to fix his image problem. And so there's this YouTube channel called Circle Guy News that just trash him. And we did this on real Twitter before people realized it was part of the book. We had an account that did this. And Bill, Ryan, and TJ, who run the Invincible podcast, they are actually Circle Guy News, and they are drawn as such in the book as themselves. And so Marshall sits down with them with a business opportunity pitch, which was they do his merch and he gives them access. And so the first thing they offer is a help welcome me to your neighborhood Radiant Black black box, and inside is a bath bomb with the Radiant Black logo on it. It's also a secret mystery box with invisible ink and QR fake in a different language that you have to translate to unlock a USB drive that is password protected. And it's a whole thing. It was fun.
It just makes me tired for you, on behalf of you.
You pressed vinyl.
I know, and I'm tired all the time.
Are you still doing that?
Yeah, well, they're still in the queue making them, but we're not making any more. But vinyl production is just a nightmare. So
I'm embarking on that with something at the moment, and
well, we should compare. If you want advice or need help or anything, let me know. And I'm the person who could tell you what not to do. I can give you good advice on that.
I should not do it with a product that has a firm FOC date.
Or a limit on how many you can make, because people, when they want more, there's not a way to adjust for that. It's very fun.
We got one question, if you don't mind, Matthew Rosenberg.
Let's do it.
From Owen Saylor, which is also my main question for you, Kyle. So it's perfect. What is the process like for managing / overseeing all the books over at Black Market Narrative? And they want to know about books in the Massive Verse, but also other books like Ordinary Gods and Last Flight Out. This is the main thing I've been so curious about is with bringing in these new books with new creators that several of them, start in places that seem entirely unrelated, but they're part of this universe. So I've been so curious what that's like, shepherding people in and connecting it all.
It's fun. It's fulfilling. It's a lot of work, because it's basically Michael and myself across everything. and on a given day, that's to varying degrees of success. You know, we're a little tired at the moment, but there are some things in our process that I think are incredibly efficient and is part of why we're able to run as many projects and books in the manner we're able to. And there are other things that it's like, oh man, this is just one of those opportunity costs where it's like the manual labor side of this, you know, is something that we can't afford to alleviate at the stage. Like, for example, like I do all the pay statements by hand to every single creator. You know, Michael does the accounting, but then I'm generating the pay statements and doing all the wire transfers or ACH payments or PayPal payments or whatever form of money is going. And then I have accountants that help me, and anyway, sort of, yeah. So, but stuff like that, it's like, that would be great to not have to do myself, but that just, unfortunately, the opportunity cost right now means that, you know, you have to. But as far as like the big stuff that I think is integral is, and I am a firm believer in this, we basically run everything over Google Chat. Over the years, Matt, you got into comics still at the right time when creators were using Google Chat. Yeah. It felt like everybody was on Google Chat. And so it just became, and there was a period where like, I think when AOL Instant Messenger we were still using, and like that could integrate into like iMessage and GChat, and it was like one thing. So people were using that a lot. So I just kind of have stayed on it over these years.
It's the original Hive.
Yeah. Yeah. But my Black Market kind of email setup, I have set up as a company or as an organization kind of within Google. And so we actually run everything in threads and chat rooms. And then all of our scripts, all of our docs are all, you know, like Google Doc based. So everyone can see things at all times. You can leave comments on things and stuff like that. Slack would probably be better for this, but I'm too ingrained between GChat and Dropbox. Those are our kind of big core things. And I set up, I'm really big on systems, and Michael's really, really good with systems. And so like our file structure is real well maintained. And so it's, so that side of it's, you know, really efficient. But then beyond that, like, yeah, I kind of, for me personally, I kind of play a different role on each book, it feels like, and I kind of come in and out at times. So like I'm really, really involved getting it off the ground. And you know, I think I've casted most of the artists on our books, as well as colorists. And that includes like when someone needs to step off, like Chris O'Halloran wasn't able to continue on Rogue Sun just with his schedule. So we had to find a new colorist who also fits. And that just comes from many years of relationships, from working on a lot of books and knowing different art agents and just having a love of comic book art. That's probably my favorite thing about comics to this day is like, I'm still amazed by like finding good artists, finding exciting artists is like the thing that makes me like still get excited about stuff. And then seeing them turn in awesome stuff, you know? So that there's that side of it. And then I kind of serve anywhere from like a consultant. I would say I'm more of a kind of creative consultant on Rogue Sun. Like I got it set up for Ryan. But Ryan knows what he's doing. Ryan knows how to run, you know, long running books and things like that. So Ryan and we talk through stuff all the time, but I'll call him with stuff I'm trying to solve on Radiant Black and vice versa. Dead Lucky, I'm a little bit more, I'd say a little bit more of kind of a creative director on that one. Just in that, like, you know, Melissa and I worked really, really well together on Power Rangers because she was the exec on Power Rangers at Saban and then Hasbro when I was doing the books. And that continued on, you know, with us working on the video game together that I wrote for them and the short film and stuff like that. And so it's fun, like, you know, we have a really good style of communication and kind of help. So, and it's her first book. So helping her kind of, you know, Matt, I'm sure you've gone through this a ton where it's like you read sometimes a script or you'll see a script and you're like, I know why you're doing that. And like, I did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the move. And and it's hard to articulate why, other than that I know it won't work because I've done it and it didn't work. And it would really need to be, but this is really hard to explain why what I'm pitching will work, you know? And so that's been actually part of it that's been really fun for me and incredibly frustrating is like for the last 2 years, like learning how to give notes and learning how, you know, I've always given notes to friends and other creators, but in a way where it's like, especially if someone pushes back and then you have to figure out like, well, why am I reacting the way I'm reacting to this thing? Is it because I just wouldn't do it this way? Or is it because there's something that I believe is like a tenet of storytelling for what I believe makes a good story that now I have to figure out a way to articulate that's helpful and additive, you know?
Yeah, I always people come to me and sort of ask me for reads and notes a lot, and always have. And I sort of, I think when I was at Marvel, like a decent number of the Marvel writing staff would like send me stuff and bounce stuff off me of like the exclusives, and so I was kind of always giving notes. But I have so much respect for editors who can articulate what the problems are, because I have such a hard time doing it, and it's so much easier for me to be like, this is how I would do it. Do you like this more? And like, that's just how my notes are so often, of just like, I'm going to show you what works for me. I don't know why it works for me exactly, or I have a hard time getting it out to you, but like, here's a different approach. And does it make sense? So like, yeah, I think being a creative who has to give notes is a real different skill set.
Yeah. And the other thing too, is that between the massive verse and then the stuff that's not in the massive verse, it's been fun to kind of, it's been fun for our kind of vision of it to evolve and kind of change as we find the things that we're enjoying doing and also the things that are working. But the one thing that's kind of consistent across the board is that everything that we are doing, we're trying to build out with a really, really strong visual identity. And Michael as the unifying kind of factor across all of these things is really great for that. It also means, though, and this is why I flagged earlier that like when we did the League and I had the DVDs and the cover was really striking and, you know, we'd invested in that. That's something I've always been a kind of big believer in. But it was Stevenson that said it to me a couple of years ago. We were talking about marketing and how, you know, a lot of creators conflate noise with marketing. And I had asked him, I said, well, then how do you sell a book in 2018, whatever year this was? And he said, it really comes down to it being a book that you're presenting with such a confidence and clarity of vision and presentation that it's like undeniable. And so that comes down to your logo. It comes down to your title. It comes down to your pull quotes. It comes down to your colors, your interior design, you know, all of that stuff matters.
Sure.
And that's something that it's been really cool to be able to kind of art direct with Michael on a lot of these books, and then going out and finding cover artists that I think are in the same, you know, space, and Michael as well. That's been the stuff that we've really enjoyed. And also the stuff that has there's a bunch of other stuff we're working on that hasn't been announced, like a lot of stuff that, like maybe too much stuff, but we'll get through it. And that's the thing that has resonated kind of the most as well, is that everything that we're putting together with and for other people, being able to build it out with this very contemporary kind of lensing has been something that, you know, is definitely additive for us.
Yeah, the aesthetics you guys have is so, like, I read the first arc in single issues, but then I picked up the trade and was giving it a reread last night, and like that volume 1 cover, and then I was like, man, they have spot gloss on this, and I was like, it's a $9.99 book and it's got spot gloss, like there.
But that's we said, that was our call, you know. Sure. And oh, you're saying it because you know what it costs to do.
Yeah, I know what it costs, and I'm like, oh, they are really not sparing expenses to be like, this should be a beautiful. And it's one of my favorite covers of the last few years is that trade cover. I mean, it was like a B cover, right?
Well, it's actually an even crazier story. So during once I had the idea for Radiant. Okay, so I had the idea for Radiant Black when Eric pitched me this thing, like building out a contemporary superhero. I had been working on something that I was going to do with a different artist, and then schedules didn't work out. It was like kind of more of like a 6-issue, like post-cyberpunk, post-tech dystopia kind of future, like a Mad Max Blade Runner type kind of future. And it originally was going to be a digital series I was going to do with Jason David Frank after our Power Rangers Coinless series didn't work out because Hasbro bought Power Rangers overnight for $500 million. And understandably, prior projects were no longer interesting to them. But I was going to do this book, and it just was kind of this thing that was it was called Radiant Black, and it had miniature black holes as the iconography. It was much more of like an Aragorn, Lord of the Rings type story, where it's like the return of this thing that had been whispered about, and when Eric asked me about doing a contemporary superhero book, I was immediately like, well, the iconography and the name, I think, and some of the backstory I was building out, I was like, if I did that contemporary, that could really be a cool book. But then it became, all right, if I'm going to do that and I'm going to take that swing, I want this to be something that I could write for 10 years or 15 years without hating it. And it should be something that can grow and change with me. And, it's Kirkman that I've heard say it, like, you can't pick your hits, right? Well, I was basically sitting here going, Power Rangers to Ultraman to Radiant Black. There's a reason why the book's not about me, but there's a lot of me in the book. And that's by design. And that also includes taking these crazy swings as we're trying to launch it with this big animated trailer, bringing in a theme song, like doing all the stuff that is a celebration of the reason that I love superheroes, the stuff I grew up on, the different cartoons, the different movies, the different ways that the movies were made back then. And so that cover actually was a still frame from the trailer that Eduardo Ferragato did storyboards for, and then Marcelo did as a finished in an animation style cell shaded still frame that Alex Siegel, who co-created Cowl with me and who I taught him how to video edit when we were 16 years old. He now he shoots for Bear McCreary and cuts all of his videos, and he cuts all of our stuff with Black Market. All of our trailers, he animates them. He's exceptional. Well, Alec wrote for years for me, so his storytelling, sense is off the charts. Well, Alec animates the thing, and we all love how the trailer turns out so much. Marcelo goes, hey, I have an idea, and he takes that image and he then does it, finishes it as a cover. And it's one of those moments where you're trying to find a brand identity, but you can't force these things, right? The second that I had that Radiant Black design from Marcelo, sorry, I jumped ahead, I'm a little all over the place, but I'm a better rewriter than writer. Once I started building this out, like, okay, let's do the Radiant Black contemporary. Let's put a lot of myself into it. Let me build something that can talk about my fears and failures and just my look at our generation, where we're at, and all of these other kind of issues and stuff I hadn't really seen in books in this way. And then when Marcelo nailed the design is when I was like, I'm going all out. Like, I'm going to build this out to be something that can't be denied. Like, I want to take a really massive swing with it. And so in the 11th hour, that was not even a cover. Like, we had the A cover from Michael Cho, because that was something really important to me. He was the first person I asked to do a cover, because again, I wanted to try something really bold and striking. And then that helped settle our, he did some tweaks to the logo that put it at a tilt. That influenced how we developed the look of those early issues, like the logo that we were using now on a tilt. That particular cover, I actually was calling Jeff Boyzin a few days before FOC, and I was like, or maybe it was a few days before announcement, either way, and I was like, should we add a cover? And he showed it to Eric, and Eric said absolutely. And so we made that an issue, an open to order B cover. And when it printed really like not great. There's this weird gradient banding down it that's kind of like a green to purple tint out. And as we were discussing what we're going to do for the trade, Marcelo said, well, we all thought this was the cover, including Eric, for the trade. Yeah. And Marcelo had this idea of how to do a series of them going forward. So we all embraced it. And then it was Marcelo and I that went, let's do this. Let's kind of redo this cover for the trade and make sure that blue, because Marcelo was before he was drawing Radiant Black, he was a colorist for at least 10 years full time. This is the book I kind of pulled him from coloring to do Radiant Black. And so he made sure that the cyan and everything that he was doing for that cover was pure. So it's not going to print muddy. And that's why it says kind of like vibrant as it is. And then the spot gloss. So sorry, that's like print nerd shit. But
no, I liked it though. It was good.
Yeah.
I mean, the spot gloss thing, because I got the trade from you at New York, and I read it in the airport on my way back, and I was just rubbing the fucking spot gloss. The spot, like it's a big difference.
Well, that comes the reason why we did it. I mean, maybe we would have done it anyway, but I was adamant about it from the get-go because I did a book a few years ago called Hadrian's Wall, and it's the soft touch finish on the cover, and our book it's black, but there's no gloss on it at all, and I actually think it looks really cheap as a result because spot gloss or soft touch black tends to print muted, so your blacks aren't very rich on it, and then if you don't have spot gloss to create at least, I don't know, spot gloss to me is like the great like equalizer of like any design and in some ways it makes it just, some things pop. It feels a little more kind of prestige, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I love it.
Do we have more audience questions? I feel like we do.
We do have some folks from over on the Substack. Owen's Reviews also did want to know, what is Marshall's last name?
I don't think we have revealed it yet.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, it's not like a reveal. I just don't want to say it. If I
oh my god, what if it was? What if it was Spielberg?
Oh my god,
guys, it's Rosenberg. I'm not.
Oh my god, that's a great last name.
Lucy.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
No, I just don't want to say it in case it's until it's in print. It's not canon. So.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Fair. Well, we got the Substack questions. I can kick us off if you'd like with a question from Dan. What are a couple of your favorite comic stories of all time? Ones that really blew your mind?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question, but it's also, I feel like it's a question that kind of comes down to eras for me. You know, I think it's the combination of when you read something that's as important as kind of the quality of the material. You know, I tried to read Watchmen when I was 12 or 13 and I didn't get it, and I was bored and I didn't keep reading. And then I read it.
You should check it out. It's pretty
read it. Does it have? You think there might be?
I don't know. Give it another go.
Yeah,
it holds up.
But I read it at 18 or 19 in college and loved it. You know, I would say a lot of Darwin Cook's work was really kind of important and influential to me, even in ways that I didn't know then. And it's not stuff I would have said was my favorite, but looking back, it's the stuff that has stuck with me the most. I love all of his Parker work. You know, it's in the same space as kind of any of Ed Brubaker's work and what Ed and Sean do together. I think for my money, Invincible is probably the best superhero comic run of all time. And that's, I say that only having read it a few years ago for the first time. Like I read it during COVID. I had all the hardcovers here that Sean Kirkham had hooked me up with years ago. Or no, not even years ago. It was like right before the world shut down. And so I just read it all over the course of like 2 months. And all 144 issues. And it was awesome to just find something to be a fan of again. Like the swings that it takes and the way that book grows and matures. I don't know that I would have said that about it if I read it 5 to 10 years ago, but reading it now, having built an original superhero series myself in Cowl, and then also building, work for hire superheroes for many years, like reading it, I have so much respect for what it does and the kind of inside baseballness of it all and everything.
Mhm.
So.
It's funny because I when I talk about books that are a huge influence, and I love Invincible, I talk about The Walking Dead a lot, and I think people are like sort of caught off guard, and they're like, really? And I point to this moment in The Walking Dead where there's a spoiler, so everyone can earmuff if they don't want to hear a spoiler from a book that came out 11 years ago. But The Walking Dead, there's a scene in The Walking Dead where they get to this town and it's all safe and everything's okay, and they're told like, you can stay here, but you have to turn your guns over, and we don't have weapons. And they all sneak out and go and get their weapon, and they're like, they sneak out and they're like, we have to get our weapons back. Like, it's not safe. These people don't understand the real world. And there's this moment, and you're totally with them as a reader, where you're like, yeah, I know what they've been through. I know what they are up against. Like, they do need their weapons. But then there's just this realization that's like, oh, they're the villains now.
Yeah.
And like, we're now following the bad guys because we've watched them be on this journey where they have no choice but to be bad guys. And the book sort of goes back on that and circles around. But it was a moment that I've never had in fiction before, because I spent so long with those characters and so long. And the way that Robert Kirkman and Charlie Adler and all them like can take a story and maneuver it to new places and recontextualize everything that came before and make it mature and make your perspective on everything change in the story is like, it's a moment that, like Spider-Man's always the good guy in Spider-Man. Like you never have a moment where you're like, oh, is Spider-Man actually the bad guy here? Like there are moments, but that's not the arc of it. Right. But like in Walking Dead, he does that. So it's funny to hear you say like, yeah, Invincible for me, the way the book matures. I was like, yeah, The Walking Dead, the way the book matures for me was such an eye-opening thing for me as a storyteller.
Yeah, and it's weird because you get asked a lot like, what's your favorite comic, or I get asked a lot like what my favorite movie is, and I always like to say that it's like, or I'll ask people if I turn around or talking to friends or whatever, it's like, well, what are your give me your top 4 favorite movies today? Meaning like, it's like, there's a recency bias, but it's also like, what off the top of your head, like the caveat is like, it could change tomorrow. Cause it really does. Yeah. It's tough to narrow down, but what I go back to more like increasingly my all-time, I always say and it's true, my all-time favorite movie is Memento. It's not a movie I rewatch all that often, but the reason it's my all-time favorite movie is because of what it represents for me as a creator. Sure. And it being this, the epitome of taking full advantage of a concept. And I have this whole kind of story I walk through about it in the moment, like you're talking about in Walking Dead, where you're like, I didn't know you could do that. And it makes perfect sense. And it's this great, kind of combination of, again, concept, theme, but also, saying something. Well, that would be a theme. And just being really innovative. While still playing within an established genre that also is, happens to be something that I really like. I don't think it's his best movie. I think The Prestige is his best movie by far. Sure. But, wow. Yeah, I mean, especially for emotionally and narratively, I think it's far more complex.
I feel like people are weird about The Prestige. I feel like people aren't so hot on. I love The Prestige.
I love The Prestige. I'm more of a Dunkirk person, but.
I would have loved it so much if you were like, actually, Batman Begins.
I think Batman. Really like Batman Begins.
It would just be a hot take.
It would.
Tenet.
I love Tenet.
Tenet fucking rocks.
Yeah. I am not a Tenet fan.
He's not.
Oh, damn. You didn't understand it.
Exactly.
Do we have more questions, Griffin?
Yes, we do. Yes, we got one from Brian. Question for Kyle. You are the master of the Power Rangers Radiant 90s feel stories and characters. What other genre would you like to explore that would surprise your fan base and the industry?
Well, it's funny because I think what would surprise the industry and fans might be to know that I've done stuff in those other genres. They just haven't bought them. But Matt, you get that, right?
That's a good line.
No, I like a lot of crime fiction, and so I do some work in that kind of space. But like, I tend to like doing, for a while I was doing a lot of sci-fi noirs. It felt like even Cowl is this very noirish period piece. Historical fiction is a lot of fun, and I haven't done a ton of that. I've done some, and I've done these books that definitely have touches of it where I go, ooh, yeah, that would be fun to actually really dive in on the right thing and commit yourself to one day. So one of the first big Batman book I did at DC was this series called Gates of Gotham, and it was this kind of then and now murder mystery of and Scott and I did it together. He helped me break the story, and then I wrote it, and then I brought in Ryan Parrott actually to write the last 3 issues with me, because I was then doing New 52 and just was way over extended as a brand new writer. But it was looking at kind of the beginnings of Gotham City, and it was looking at kind of the rise of the first skyscrapers and the building of a modern, America through the lens of 1880s Gotham and the families of power, the Waynes, the Elliots, the Cobblepotts, the Canes, that really kind of shaped the future direction of the country and specifically the city. And so diving into all that stuff was a blast. And I was on a big Devil in the White City kind of kick around that. And my dad is my dad's really an engineer and has, he's a really big train aficionado and still chases steam engines and goes out and does photo shoots and stuff in rural places with historic steam engines that have been restored and run on tracks for rail fans and stuff like that. So all that kind of stuff is fun to me, but it's also I can't, I know what I'm doing right now through 2024, probably including 2024. So it's the idea of adding anything else is really, really scary and daunting. No matter how much the genre might be fun. It'd be cool to do a Western one day.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
They ever going to make that Devil in the White City movie? What's Leo doing with that?
I don't know.
Do we want to go do a quick quiz? Do we want to wrap things up?
I've got one more question, Ethan.
All right. I just felt like things had come to a close.
No, we got one more.
If we want to artificially lengthen the podcast,
we're not. It's not artificial. This is very organic. Everything about this
feels
organic.
Synthetic. I don't know.
Wow. We'll wait till you hear the question.
Okay, this better be good, Griffin.
We don't have we don't have
we don't have
I'm looking down the line of the questions.
I knew it.
We did Owens, Sebastian's. We answered.
I had a feeling in my gut. We do this professionally, man.
I will ask one question to end it. Okay. And this is a question that I wouldn't normally ask a creator.
Who am I shit talking about?
Me. Okay. Why do you hate me? No, this is.
You want it alphabetical, numerical?
Chronological.
Did it choose your own path? Or?
This is definitely not YouTube gold. I appreciate that.
It might be unbacked gold.
Yeah. So my question is, I wouldn't ask anyone else this because I don't think other people's careers work the way yours does, and it sort of goes back to the question about planning. But do you have an end game with Radiant Black? Do you have a final story? Is it going a place? And as I started to write this, I realized I was the question I really want to know is, do you want it to keep going after you die?
Yeah, that's a great question, isn't it? That's something that you don't really think about. You think you have an answer to one way or another when you start a book. Mm-hmm. And look, it's one thing to think that, and to think and believe, even after, even if you've gotten to a point of being cynical, and so if you're believing that something's going to work and you've lasted this, 10 years in the industry, maybe there's a shot that it's going to work. If you really think you're attuned to the different levers that need to kind of be working in your favor on a book, and that includes the creative, it includes marketing, it includes the angle, it includes the market, it includes all of these things, right? Presentation, all of that. It's another thing for it to actually work. Mm-hmm. And so going through the experience of it working, and then also the scaling that we've done kind of at the pace we've done it. Mm-hmm. The short answer is I don't know. because I for sure have an ending, but at the same time, the way that I've built everything thus far is like I know what the first like 36 issues of the book are.
Okay.
And there's stuff in the book next year that we're doing that is also very ambitious. And I think once that stuff starts coming out, I think you'll you'll see why I'm being kind of cagey here about what the direction of the book, the future of the book, like whether the book even can exist anymore. Like that's all stuff that there's some big narrative swings coming up. So I would say though, like, somebody warned me at one point, not warned me, but they were politely telling me like, yeah, I wouldn't let other people write my characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, because I was talking about bringing on co-writers for some of these, issues, and I brought on quite a few co-writers, and I didn't really understand what I definitely didn't understand when they were saying it, like why,
Mm-hmm.
but I understand it now. I don't agree with it personally, but it's an interesting experience when it's, again, like watching Cherish build out Satomi on Radiant Red and watching Megan and Melissa build out Eva and Radiant Pink is awesome. Like, I love that. Sometimes I feel bad giving notes but they're also part of our, the main Radiant Black kind of book, and Marcelo and I have to steer that, and we have plans for things as well, Yeah. So that experience has been something that's changed kind of my feelings about it, because now I've done it and other people have written my books or my, our characters. And, also I have, Alec Siegel and Joe Clark come on from time to time and co-write with me. And Joe is one of my oldest friends from high school as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been really cool. I could see, whereas I think like for a long time, like the idea of like letting someone else write the main series solo was like absolutely a non-starter for me before. I think with where we've kind of gotten to in our heading, like it's definitely not a non-starter anymore. Like I'm more comfortable with the idea of it now. Whether that means like, should the character continue on like after I'm dead? I mean, on the one hand, like what the hell am I going to care? But on the other, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Yeah, screw it. Let him keep that.
This isn't legally binding. You can change your mind.
Decided right now.
Yeah. But well, that was a great answer, and I appreciate all your thoughtfulness on the topic, Kyle.
I got nothing else.
But more than anything, I appreciate you coming on, man. I miss hanging out with you, but also it's really fun to get to pick your brain on this stuff, because like I said, like you're the creator more than almost anyone else in the field that I look to, and I'm just like, how is he doing this? Like, it's so inspiring and intimidating and impressive, and I've just been in love with it the whole time, and so it's great to talk about it.
Thank you. That truly means a lot, and it's also one of those things where like I don't know who. I assume no one knows what we're doing. No one's watching. Like I'm just doing this with my friends, and it's. But also, like, social media is obviously very different than it was. It was always a lie to begin with, but now it's like now a lot of the people that I enjoyed interacting with like aren't even there, So like, but sorry, I don't know if that's really loud or not. The phone in the back.
You're getting a call from the 1950s, dude. You got.
That's what I was thinking.
It's my bat phone. I'm not kidding. I have a red.
Oh my God.
60s landline bat phone over there.
Wow.
It used to be next to my desk, but no, the we're just kind of making the stuff, and like I assume that pros don't care or know what we're doing. Like everyone's involved in their own stuff, like we all are. But the thing it does, like, I'm not gonna lie, like it's fun when I hear from other people and pros I respect that they dig this stuff. And at New York Comic-Con we did an exclusive for Radiant Black 18 where it was the origin of Radiant Yellow. So he can perceive all the different branching points kind of in his life, and he can place his consciousness into any choice kind of moment of him, and then perceive out. It's kind of the Doctor Strange thing a little bit. With what we're doing with this is ultimately is pretty different. But the point is, for his origin, I thought playing with form, it'd be really cool if we told his origin issue as 4 eras of his life all at once, each era separated by 18 years for issue 18. So it's 1984, 2002, 2020, and 2038. And you can read it as I wrote it with Lawrence Holmes, a friend of mine, a radio personality in Chicago. But I structured it so that you can read it as page turns, right? You read left to right because it's all double page spreads. So you read the top row, then the second row, then the third row, then the fourth row, turn the page, top, second, third, fourth, right? But for New York Comic-Con, we printed a version. We only made 250 copies, but I really pushed for us to do this because I wrote it to work this way, where it's an accordion fold out. So you can actually, it's all 22 pages out like this. So you can read one timeline all the way across, et cetera, and then they converge at a moment when he touches the Radiant, and you realize that they're all being perceived at once. And it's a really cool, like, different, reading experience. And that's the stuff, like, there were, Capullo was very complimentary. I'll say that. That was like really, it was a fun moment. There were a number of pros that were very, very kind of complimentary about it. So.
Well, Ethan and I were fucking stoked about it when you gave us a couple of copies. We were very much the walk back to the hotel that day from the con was like, how the fuck did he do this? This is so that as aspiring creators, that was super awesome to see. So excellent work, sir. Yeah,
no, thanks. I mean, it's you just got to make the stuff. Like that's what it comes down to. So
absolutely
awesome. Well, thanks again, Kyle, for coming out and spending time with us.
And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our discussion with Kyle Higgins. Make sure to check out Radiant Black as well as everything else Kyle is working on by giving him a follow on Twitter at Kyle D. Higgins and subscribing to his newsletter at kyledhiggins.substack.com. To get the latest episodes of this podcast as well as news, giveaways, and even comics delivered straight to your inbox, go to ashcanpress.com and sign up for the newsletter. We'll be back next week with another wonderful guest. And in the meantime, you can write to us at ideasdon'tbleedpod@gmail.com or tweet to Matthew Rosenberg at Ashcan Press on Twitter, me at Tales to Astonish, or Griffin at Griff Sheridan. We'll include some of your correspondence on the show, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. And big thanks to Summer People for our theme song, Where's the Poison? Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.